Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. We got a great guest from the Great White North of Canada, Steve Bell, with us today. Before we get started, and I give you the background on Steve, I want to thank our mutual friend and lovely guy, great producer, Murray Pulver out of Canada. Murray was on the show a while back. Another great episode if you want to check it out. Thanks, Murray. Thank you very much. Steve Bell, Winnipeg-based singer-songwriter. He's released 22 albums over a 34-year career with independent sales exceeding 400,000 units. Add into that 4 concert videos, 5 songbooks, recorded masterclasses, and more than 3,000 live shows. And this guy's a worker. He's mostly known as a faith-inspired singer-songwriter who's also an exceptional fingerstyle guitarist. He's won 2 Juno Awards, numerous Western Canada Music and Covenant Awards, and a Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. In 2021, he was recognized with the Order of Manitoba, and in 2022, he was inducted into the Order of Canada. And we'll talk about this because this is a prestigious service award actually given to people whose service has helped shape Canadian society and whose compassion has united communities. So I'm interested in that. Steve's most recent album is an instrumental called No Words, which came out in 2023. He also has a new album coming out this year in October called The Glad Surprise. Steve lives with his wife, Nancy, in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Steve, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, too. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, man. Hey, so before we get started, I was really curious about this Order of Canada award you received, because to me, it sounds like a community service award more so than something related to music, like a Juno Award.
Right.
Talk about, and I got to believe this isn't for doing something once. This is probably like a lifetime of contributions you've done. I would love to hear more about that.
Well, it's a little bit, the motto, it's in Latin, but in English, it's they desire a better country. So they kind of give it to anybody whose life and work sort of exemplifies that there's more than just self-serving entrepreneurship or something. But it goes to scientists, it goes to artists, it goes to school teachers, anyone who's sort of showed up as that. So I think when I saw the description of how they were describing me, it was for I mean, I've written a lot of music. I've
Sure
contributed a lot to the cultural landscape, but I've also been quite active in various social justice issues in Canada, and I've lent my name and my efforts to a number of things, whether it's anti-poverty things, Indigenous reconciliation issues in Canada, which is a big deal here, and so I've been quite public about those, and so I think that's really those things have obviously shown up on someone's radar. So
that's really cool.
I got the award. Yeah. No, it is very cool. Yeah, thank you. I was very honored by that. Yeah,
it's a big honor. It's huge.
And you're humbled, and also it feels a little bit like also like now I've got to do it. It sort of feels like we recognize you've done this. Now go do it. It sort of feels like so it's good.
Yeah, if you stop, they're like, hey man, we gave you this award. What are you doing?
Yeah, you're supposed to be a good Canadian, so don't stop.
Well, that's good. Congratulations, man. That's really
Thanks.
nice.
Yeah.
All right, you got an interesting story. Your dad was this right here was one of the reasons I knew you'd be a good guest. Your dad was a prison chaplain.
Yeah. In
the late 60s and early 70s. First, I did have a guy on whose dad was a warden, first time as a prison chaplain. Mm. And on Saturday afternoons, you would go with him to the prison chapel where he invited inmates to worship and have jam sessions. Yeah. So I have a few questions about this, and please feel free to add any other information. It's pretty interesting. I would imagine that was a fairly unusual thing to do on your dad's end, just like, hey guys, let's jam and, have worship together. Was that like, I don't know what your prisons are like up there, but there's this is not a forgiving country down here in prisons.
Well, it's like, we don't have the massive prisons like you guys have, like a big prison here is like 300 people, like, inmates.
Oh.
Like, we don't have these like thousands. I think you guys are more like, it's their like,
it's a huge business. It is corporate now. BlackRock manages many of these prisons.
Yeah, it's not like that here, and it's still seen as it's like, at least in theory, as a place that someone can kind of maybe recollect and get themselves together and move out. And I think right off the bat, I think there's a general assumption that any normalcy that the inmates can experience while they're in there is a good thing, and so people are encouraged families are encouraged to come and visit. Unfortunately, with so many inmates, they didn't never get a visit for the whole time that they're in there, or get so few. And so Dad just believed that bringing us kids in and hanging out at the chapel, we ran around the place Sundays and Saturdays, and giving the inmates some sort of sense of normalcy. They sort of became like my uncles in a weird, fun way.
Yeah.
And it was just, this was our community. And then the inmates, several of them were, of course, at any given time, there's a number of musicians in jail.
Oh yeah, of course.
So they would ask Dad if they could have the jam sessions in the chapel, and the reason being, it was about the only place they could go to where there wasn't a heavy presence of guards, right? So Dad's agreement with the inmates, as long as there's no shenanigans, we'll keep the guards out. They could come into that place, and just for an afternoon, they could just sort of be normal. And they would sit in a circle and have these jam sessions. And a lot of these guys were country guys, Chet Atkins, that kind of style. And I was dying to learn how to play. And so they just said, well, if Steve wants to play, get him a guitar and let him sit with us. And so every Saturday afternoon, I'd sit in this circle for 2 or 3 hours. And they didn't really teach me in the sense of, here, do this, do this. It was sort of like watch, do. Yeah. And so I'd see fingers and I'd see things. And if I asked direct questions, they'd stop. But mostly they were just playing old-timey music. And I learned to play guitar the same way, in a sense, that I learned to speak English just by being around it.
Now, was your dad a player? Was he a musician?
No. My dad's not at all. Not at all. My dad's was. He died recently, but my dad, he's a theologian, pastor. My mom is a brilliant musician. She was a great piano player, great songwriter, great singer. We had a family gospel band with matching outfits and like that whole thing. When I was a kid, we'd tour around. Yeah. And Dad would preach and we would sing. We were like a whole unit.
Really? Right? So you had like a whole, like a TV show.
Yeah, we were like a traveling thing, and we did that every Sunday night. We were every Sunday night through we were somewhere, and he would promote his work, because they're always looking for, in prison work, they're always looking for volunteers, people to come and befriend inmates, all that kind of stuff. So we'd be in a church on a Sunday evening, and Dad would preach, and he'd talk about his work, and us kids would sing, and then the deal was we all go to McDonald's and we could have an apple pie afterward and a hot chocolate. That's wild. So that was the deal. That was my growing up.
That's incredible. Now, so he didn't get pushback from the administration on any of these things of like, no, because they did really encourage. I mean, they had even inside, they'd have family days where inmates, their families and could come, and it'd be a big open area, and there'd be barbecues and hot dogs, and there'd be kids running around, and it was just really important for inmates to have some sort of sense of normalcy and family and community. And it was pretty safe. I mean, when you think, here's the other thing. There's probably about the safest place a child can be would be in a prison. I mean, people that hurt children have to be in a prison within a prison. So there was no like pedophiles and no, murderers and
murderers for sure, but not pedophiles. Like lots of murderers, yes. But but most people that do those sorts of things, they do it under a particularly compressed environment. They don't wake up in the morning hoping they can murder someone.
Yeah, it's situational.
And they love kids and people who hurt kids, they go to specific prisons because they'd be torn apart inside a regular prison. Yeah.
Oh yeah, same thing here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this.
I never felt unsafe ever.
Would you have done that with your kids?
Oh yeah. I mean,
you would have. Okay.
I wouldn't, knowing my experience. I think if I didn't know this, that would sound a little weird or unsafe or even irresponsible. Sure. But having been through it, I wouldn't hesitate for a second.
Interesting. Wow, interesting. Yeah. Prisons are either different here or just my frame of reference is different, but it's not.
I couldn't see that
happening here.
Yeah, I think because I think also what's also different now. I think now might be a little bit different because the whole the crazy drug stuff. I think has changed in what's going on inside prisons.
Oh yeah,
when I was a kid.
Very much so.
I think it might be a little bit more chaotic and a little bit more dangerous maybe now than it was back in the day.
Yeah. Wow. Really interesting.
Yeah.
So tell me, what lessons did you get out of this experience, both musically and about life.
Well, musically, I basically learned my trade. I mean, it was, I say this in concert in kind of half in jest, but it's actually true that I've had a whole career in music because Canada's Most Unwanted Men invested in me as a kid.
That's so crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, I know that's a kind of a good soundbite phrase, but it's actually true. These guys actually cared about me. They were proud of me. They taught me to play guitar. They had their own bands. I was invited to join bands. I was in so when there'd be a family day, I was in the band. There's got pictures of me when I'm, 8, 9, 10 years old, playing guitar with these guys,
It's so unimaginable for here.
So I learned not only music individually, but I also started to learn how to play in a group. I had to learn to play, understand arrangements, how to make space for other people, how to step in when it's my turn, all that kind of stuff, that the communion that is group music.
Sure.
And how to be a citizen of a band. I learned then. And then the other thing, more sort of socially, spiritually, I mean, I think you just I remember when I first went in, I was all excited because I was going to see these bad men. I was going to, everybody, I was going to hang out with bank robbers, and I had some idea, what they would look like.
The bad boy appeal.
Yeah, the bad boy appeal, and of course that makes me a little dangerous, right? And chicks dig that, that's what you're thinking as a little boy.
That's so funny, yeah.
And being so disappointed at how normal these people were. They were just people. A few of them had, tattoos, but generally they were just people. And so I think I really learned that there's and not only. And people that had something to offer, something really good to offer, And so I learned that every person has a fundamental dignity that nobody can take away. I learned that every single person has a gift to offer, and that I should never be too uppity to receive a gift from any place, from any part of society, upper or lower. And I also learned that everybody has a story, and that before I judge, I have no business judging anybody if I don't have time to hear their story.
Hey guys, ever wish you could get involved in music licensing and start collecting ongoing royalties for placing your tracks in movies, commercials, trailers, and video games? Well, now you can. Simply check out this new free training video called Where the Money's Hiding in the Music Business. You can find it online at musicreboot.com. And this video shows you how to create the financial stability you've always wanted and how to take advantage of the current explosion of opportunities in music licensing due to the current situation of streaming and the internet. So check it out online right now at musicreboot.com. Whether you've never made a placement before, or even if you've made a few placements, but you don't have a specific system to make ongoing placements more consistently, this video's got you covered. So check it out online right now at musicreboot.com.
And usually whatever you think about another person, their attitudes, their opinions, their actions, it'll change once you hear a story. There's very few people who wake up and think, I would like to be a bad person today.
Yeah, right.
There are occasionally, your sociopaths and
sure,
but I and again, we can't excuse bad behavior or dangerous behavior, and sometimes you have to incarcerate people to protect society or protect them from themselves. But there's always a story, and so I think I just can't look at somebody and say you are the things you've done.
Sure. So it sounds like you learned a lot about forgiveness, even in a weird way.
Yep. Yeah, forgiveness and also but you also then learn yourself. Like I can learn to forgive myself that even my, lesser actions or bad actions, I mean, yeah, they're choices, but they're motivated by experience and trauma and all that kind of stuff. And so rather than feel terrible about myself because I did X, Y, or Z, kind of go, okay, what's behind that? Is there a way of digging into that and find healing or, a way to sort of move beyond it? And so I think it really did arouse empathy in me that I might not have had otherwise.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all like one step away from doing something nuts, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah,
you just don't.
Yeah.
I mean, circumstances come up in life that you never imagined sometimes.
Yeah,
and
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And
Not
also, I think you have to learn how to realize to this, no one event makes you who you are. It's a million decisions, right?
Sure.
And so it matters that I'm kind to someone at a store or a server at a restaurant. That these are every choice towards kindness or grace is
Yeah.
moving you in a direction or the other.
I agree
Right.
with you.
And so, I mean, I just look at my kids and I say, just small acts of kindness every day and make sure nobody even knows you did them, because it forms you.
Yeah.
It sets you off in a direction. And at the minute you start, nursing resentments, self-centeredness, that builds over time. And all of a sudden, you're not who you wanted to be.
Sure.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I've always said my whole life, show me how the guy treats the waiter or the guy pushing the broom in his office.
Yeah.
That tells you the true truth of who somebody is and how they act.
100%. And that's a decision that you can make, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's totally free will. How you treat your boss or whoever's paying you, or your clients. That's an easy one. But show me how you treat the guy who's cleaning the toilets at night. Yeah, I agree.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, thanks. That was an interesting story. So how did you first, through that, so you started playing music actually professionally in this gospel band with your family.
Mm-hmm.
After that, how did you, as you started growing up, how did you get into your career? How did the career develop?
Well, just out of high school, I started working in a music store. I didn't really ever think I had what it takes to be a professional musician. That just didn't even really occur to me. I just thought, this is not possible. But what ended up happening, I was working in this little music store and kind of waiting for some idea of a reason to go to college and find a career or something, but I just couldn't think of anything.
And your parents were cool with that?
Oh, yeah. My dad, it's funny. Like, my dad always says, he said the most important thing is that you find your place. He didn't, I remember saying to my dad, "Do you want me to be a preacher?" And Dad said, "I'd be proud of you if that's what you're supposed to be and you found that you did it." He says, "It would devastate me if you did it to please me."
Wow. Let me tell you, man, as a guy who came from totally shitty parents, I can tell you right now, your dad was the standard of
he was an unusually good man.
Yeah.
And so no, he was really good with that.
Find your place. I love that.
Yeah. And so I started working at the store, and while I was there's a local band they were a jazz fusion band working the clubs. I loved them. They were really good. So back at Spyra Gyra, I don't know if you remember that whole era, right? Sort of pop, jazz, funk, rock, and they were trying to do better in the clubs, and they realized they would need a singer, and so they asked me if I'd come and play, and so I played saxophone and sang lead in that band for a year. And, and then so I started getting into the clubs. I met another two guys. We started a side kind of a gig as a folk trio. And that ended up being actually a fairly well-known group in my area, a group called Elias, Schritt, and Bell.
Okay.
And we were very Crosby, Stills, Nash-y, very Joni Mitchell-y, like that kind of a thing. So I played 3 years with those guys. We played, this was back in the day. I mean, young musicians, we played 6 nights a week.
That was when there was, you could, there was, you could 6 nights a week, 3-4 sets a night. Yeah.
Yeah. And you could, if you worked hard, I had a house and a car,
right.
Not fancy ones, but it was a modest living, and I have a son who's a musician now, and he's very good. Man, these guys play, a couple times a month for beer and burgers, it's not, how do you get your 10,000 hours in? No, you just can't, you can't get your time in. And so, basically for about 10 years, I played clubs, and it started off with that fusion band with a folk. Then I did, pop bands and country bands, and I just basically kind of went from place to place according to friendships, and and pretty much always a side guy. I wasn't ever the front guy. I was very shy, and never occurred to me that this was something I could do on my own. It just didn't occur to me at all. So 10 years of that, and it was really great in the sense of, I mean, you're playing in hostile environments, you're playing in good environments, you're playing with other people. Almost always, it was, if I was playing guitar, there was always another guitar player who was better than I was, and so you're just always growing, right? And so the influences and the experience of working with others back then too. I mean, we were in the studios almost every day. There was, doing McDonald's commercials and A&W
Oh,
commercials.
so you were doing
and,
jingles.
Oh yeah, and then I started writing
Wow.
them and producing them, and so so it was just you were just in the studio all day, and you were playing all night, and so just the experience, the possibility to grow and to work with people and learn from people was amazing, actually. And of course, almost none of that is happening now.
It's unfortunate. Yeah, not at that light. Well, let me ask you this: so, are you still getting royalties in from all that music from the music license? No, they're old. They're not playing anymore.
That's None of the certainly none of the the commercial stuff. I was involved in some albums back in the day that did well at that time, but they're not now. Right. So there's nothing really coming in. Yeah.
Interesting. That's phenomenal, man. You really I
was really fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, it really mushroomed, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back now. So you were a band member for years. You released your first solo album in '89 called Comfort My People. Mm-hmm. What finally prompted you to step out on your own?
Well, after 10 years, I mean, it's like everything was had sort of plateaued, and I sort of realized this wasn't going anywhere. I mean, I loved playing the clubs because I thought it was going to go off somewhere, and it just never did. And after about 10 years, I'm married, I've got kids, I'm away 6 nights a week. It's still pretty modest income. It's manageable, but just barely. I'm tired all the time. And of course, a nightclub is not the healthiest place to be in 6 nights a week,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So you're drinking too much and all that. And you sort of feel this is not going anywhere. And then I had this, again, this, I'm a person of Christian faith, and so I can only tell you my experience, but one night I had this very profound experience of presence. And I felt a voice saying to me, this time of your life is over. There's something else for you to do. And it was so dramatic. It was so powerful.
Dude, I just got goosebumps. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so I thought I was being told to hang up my guitar. So I quit playing. I quit the band. My wife is a teacher. She was able to go back to work and wanted to. And I stayed at home with the kids for a year looking for something else. At this point, I'm late 20s. I'm completely unemployable. It's too late to go to college, and all that. So depression, feeling like a failure, And that's when I started going back to some of the scriptures of my youth, like the Psalms in the Old Testament, just for prayer, like language for prayer. I mean, so many of the Psalms are lament. Where are you? That kind of stuff. Yeah. And there was my prayer, my language, and that was no longer somebody from 4,000 years ago. These are now my words. And then melodies started to form and songs started to come. And I started to write these more devotional songs that weren't something that I hoped the public would like. They were just my way of surviving. And they started to build. And right in the middle of that, an old family friend came by my house, a friend of my dad's, and said, Steve, you should record like a gospel album, the stuff that you're writing now. And I went, like, why? Like, for what? Who would buy it? Where would I get the money? And he said, well, how much would it cost? And so I phoned a friend of mine, Dave Ziglinski, who coincidentally now is my manager, but he had a commercial studio. And he said, well, if we pull in all of our favors and do this, maybe it'll cost you $10,000. So, that was back in the day. And so my dad's friend cut me a check for $10,000.
Wow.
Said, go make the record. And so I made the record. And then it was only cassette. It was sort of in between albums and CDs. It was in that in between time. So we only made cassettes at the time. And I made 100 copies, and I gave 50 to the guy that funded it. And then I kept, 50 for myself, mostly for Christmas gifts for, uncles and aunts and cousins. And then slowly people would start to phone me and say, hey, I was at your dad's place and I heard your music. Can I get a copy? And so I had a little duplicating machine. And I'd make them a copy. And eventually I had to say, can you give me $5? This is starting to cost me money. Then I started getting calls from pastors saying, I heard your music. Could you come and sing at my church? And I'd say, no, I'm not a minister. I'm a failed bar musician. I had literally
your confidence was not particularly high.
Yeah. And also, I grew up in these Christian environments where ministers or people that were confident, they had held these big Bibles. They told people what was wrong with them and how to fix things. And I just didn't have any of that. I didn't see the world that black and white, and so I kept on saying no. And I was also nervous. I'd been playing for 10 years to people that, for the most part, didn't really listen. Like in the clubs, you're always looking for a table here or a table there that were paying attention. And that's where you kind of focus. But to all of a sudden go into a church where there's no distractions, the people are actually listening to you, felt a little terrifying. And so, but then this one pastor phoned me up. I don't know, it was like over a period of several months, several times. He says, "Please come and sing at my church." I went, No, I can't. I don't do that. I'm not a minister. I don't save souls. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. And he finally just said, "I'll pay you $200." And that was the magic
words.
Yeah, I just needed money. I was broke.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, if you're stupid enough to give me $200 to play 3 songs, I guess so.
Yeah.
And I went, and it's so hard to describe what happened. It was like, I don't know, like pixie dust fell over me. I don't know, like I got up to the mic. I was terrified, but all of a sudden I had a story, and then I had a song, and I had a story, and then I had a song, and something happened that I'd never experienced in my own. Like I just became something in front of my own eyes that I didn't even know was there. And I remember crying all the way home. Like I felt like I actually did something
like
meaningful.
Something happened.
Yeah, something happened. And then I started saying yes.
I mean, besides getting $200, because you could have been crying over that too if you hadn't gotten money in a while.
Yeah. So
I know I would be.
Yeah, I know back then, it doesn't sound like much now, but it actually was significant at the time, and it was affirming. And then I started to actually imagine that maybe this is what I'm here for. And then maybe I should start saying yes instead of no. And maybe all these years haven't been a waste. Maybe they've been a preparation. And I started to look back over the bands I had been in, the things, the events, and I started to realize this has always been heading in a direction. I just didn't know it.
Okay.
And that's when things sort of shifted for me. And I started to become the Steve Bell I'm known for now, right?
Man, that's a great story. I got a bunch of questions. Okay, so number one, first question. When you first heard this voice that said, "Hey man, you need to put that down. There's something else out there for you." Was that something that you heard in your head, or was it something that you heard out loud? If you remember.
I do remember. I did not hear it in my ear.
Okay, so
it was the way I've described it. It's almost like when they do the old monarchs or anybody that wrote a letter would do a wax sort of thing on the back.
Wax seal,
and then
sure.
And they're seal.
Here, man.
Oh, do you really? Well, the only way I can describe it is that I heard it, but I didn't hear it as that. I heard it as a seal on my heart, like that my heart was supple, and that whatever I'm going to say, God, like pressed it on my heart. That's I have something for you, and here's the like that's how I can't describe it, but that's kind of what it was like. Right. And I've had several since events where I felt spoken to, but again, never in the ear. More like this. All of a sudden, there's a soft wax, and I feel the impress, and I know what it means. That's about the best I can describe it.
Reason I wanted to know that is I started this show because I was sitting here in this chair one day. I had this white Strat. I was playing a Jeff Beck white Strat. And I heard a voice tell me, "You need to go interview guitar players." And I was like, I never heard, the only time I may have heard voices is if I was really high or something.
There was no substance involved in this.
I was just sitting here and I was like, but here's the ironic thing. I said, okay, I need to go interview guitar players. There was no resistance. I didn't even question why. Yeah. And what had happened was, I don't want to make this about me, so I'll be quick. A few years earlier, I had a really rough time of things. And at that point, I said, I need to be more open to the universe. Yeah. And so when I heard that voice, I said, man, I have to fulfill that commitment I made to myself to be more open to the universe. And I said, okay. So then I just, I'm not going to go into the whole story. And I started this show for that reason. And the proof in the pudding is what's happened, right? Like you can tell me this story and I totally understand. I 100% believe you. You can't tell everybody that in a way they're not going, well, really?
But in the end, when you sort of obey that word, blessing flows from it.
I want to hear more. I'm waiting for the next message, man.
Yeah,
To be honest with you, I'm much more open to this now.
Yeah, and I think the older you get, and the more it happens, you start to hear it in quieter and quieter whispers. I think at first God has to almost yell at us,
hit you over the head.
Yeah, but the older I get now, I realize I'm being spoken to all day.
Yeah.
And so the work of sort of moving into, say, the wisdom years or the contemplative years that we're kind of moving into now.
Is that what we call it now, the wisdom years?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I hope the wisdom.
Yeah. Well, but it's not wisdom because it's not because you're smart. It's because you didn't check out, right? Like
right,
you didn't, the only reason why we get to be, in the wisdom years is because we didn't check out years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't mean necessarily like, kill ourselves, but just, resort to just entertainment. And
no, you're still in the game, man, of life.
Yeah, you're listening. You're listening.
Yeah, you're listening.
And so, it becomes the voice becomes quieter and quieter and quieter under whisper. And then you realize that it's whispering to you all day long. And that even in the most cacophonous place, you can hear it.
Yeah. And
that's
such cool.
It's a spiritual discipline, but it's not always asking you to do amazing things. Sometimes it's just, like, smile at that person over there, and you don't know what that did. I mean, that person might be the first kindly, sign they've seen in 10 years. Like, who knows?
Sure. No, you don't know. And it costs you nothing, and it's pretty freaking easy.
And I just sort of realize now there's no such thing as an ordinary moment. It's all sacred. It's all enchanted. And if I'm listening, I get to be part of goodness. So when I was a child, I remember I was about, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years old or somewhere in there. I remember going out the back deck for whatever reason. It was late at night and there was stars out, all that, and we lived in a small town. So you saw there wasn't too much noise pollution, but I remember kind of looking up into the sky, into the galaxies, and this amazing sense of wonder came over me. And I was sort of pouring out my wonder. And then I felt something pouring back into me. And what it was goodness. I just felt there was a benevolence at the core of everything that was literally radiating towards me. I just felt that something good wanted good for me. Now I call that God now. I have other words for it, but at the time I just knew it was true. And so I realized that voice has been whispering to me my whole life, and it's not done me wrong. I mean, I've suffered like other people. People I love die or suffer, like all that, right? And I'm an idiot like anybody else, like and I cause my own trouble, but at the core of it, at the base of it, I actually believe there's a goodness that bottoms everything. And a benevolence, not just goodness, but something that wishes us well and is on our side. I just believe it.
Thank you, man. Another question about that whole story. So your higher power, God, told you, whatever, I'm just going to put whatever context people, listeners want to frame this in. There's something out there for you. When you were lingering in that whole sort of holding period, did you think to yourself, God, I need the rest of the story here? I mean, I'm sure you had that. How did you, and when you thought, how did you manage that? Or how did you, those are the kind of times where you're like, question, like, hey, man, I need you to show up here, man. Like, what, how did you, to whatever extent you're comfortable, because I know it's kind of a personal question.
It's a while back, so it's hard to remember everything. I mean, there was no plan that was, I want you to do something else, and here it is, and here's year 1, here's year 5, here's year 10, like a good entrepreneur would set out. I mean, there's none of that at all. I think it was so strong, I knew I had to do something. I just didn't know what. But then things kind of like, it just unfolded. Like the guy that comes along, for one, the songs started coming.
Okay.
Right. And then 2, somebody showed up and said, you should record them, and here's $10,000, and then fine. I'm still not really personally invested. I'm just, I'm not, there's no plan here. And then I put out the album, and I put out 100 copies, and within a year there's been 1,000, and then within a couple of years there's thousands, and people are coming. Can you come and sing? So it kind of unfolded before me, and every time I said yes to the next stage, it required a little bit of a risk, but it wasn't unreasonable.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? At no point did I sell the house and the car,
Sure.
and that didn't happen. It was just like someone said, "Could you come and play 3 songs?" And I'm thinking, I don't think I can do that well, but again, if you're stupid enough to give me $200, I kind of have to.
Sure.
And then that turned out, and so I thought, and so I said yes to the next thing, and yes to the next thing. So it was a continual, like, doors opening. Sometimes you had to give them a bit of a shove. But I've learned if I have to push too hard, maybe I shouldn't go through it. Like,
Man, I agree with you 100%.
You know what I mean? Like, a little bit of risk, but I don't know. Every time I really, really, really tried to make something happen, it was a lot of work for little gain. And every time I just sort of waited for the door to open a little bit, and I gave it a bit of a push, usually there was a little bit of effort for a fair bit of gain. And so, again, you just kind of, in this sort of the spiritual realm, you kind of learn the language of how, the divine or God or Christ, I've got all my specifics on that, but for broadly speaking, how that operates. And I think it operates, people hear things in a different way. And you learn how it is that God speaks to you, and you learn how to respond to that. And it's like anything else. It's trial and error.
So just keep listening.
Keep listening. Yeah. And here's the thing too, is not to be afraid of a mistake. Like, I remember, again, here's a dad story. When I got out of high school, I was brought up in a fundamentalist environment, Christian environment, and everything was about, God has a perfect plan for your life, and you don't want to get that wrong. And I was living in Winnipeg, and I got a call to ask if I'd go and work in a TV studio in Toronto, and I kind of really wanted to, but I didn't know if that was God's perfect plan for my life.
That's too much pressure, man. I have to think about.
It's way too much pressure. Yeah, and you almost cower. And I remember,
how the hell do you know how to answer that question?
Exactly. Yeah. But I go to my dad.
It's not like you could book a meeting with him and say, "Hey, listen, 5 minutes of your time here."
Yeah, but I remember Dad. I said to Dad, like, "Should I go?" He goes, "Sure." And I said, "How do I know if it's the right thing?" Because you don't. And then I said, "And what if I'm wrong?" He says, "Come back."
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah. So, like, and Dad said, the only mistake you can ever make is to continue in it once you realize it's a mistake.
Sure.
Or an error or a misjudgment. But at that point, you have this, you can redeem anything by just changing direction.
Sure.
Right. He says, just have the humility to say, oops. No, and then, so, like, Dad was great in the sense that he sort of freed, like, go make mistakes, son. Like, the sooner the better.
Dad was awesome, man. Like, wow, this is phenomenal.
He never, ever at any point said you should have, or this, it was only like, well, just, if that's wrong, just change it and we're good, So yeah, he was really, he was a liberator.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that was the last question I had. During this whole period, did you seek counsel from your dad? Like, hey, Dad, I did this thing, and like, I don't know am I on the right path? I don't know what the next step is. What did he say?
Well, he was, yes, I did all the time. Dad and I talked all the time. We were quite good friends. He was not an advice giver. And I realize in retrospect, how gifted he was, but he just sort of had a way of talking to you till you found your own answer. So without sort of being all counselly or anything, he just, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And, and he'd tell stories. Well, I remember when I was a kid, when I was your age, but he would never say, therefore you should do this or should do that. Yeah. He would say, I don't know what you should do, but, there's some general life principles that we generally understand and apply them and make your best decision. Get the ship moving, and then once it gets going, avoid the rocks the best as possible. But if you hit one, there's repair.
Yeah.
So
which is actually the best, the healthiest way of giving advice, honestly, man. Because like, I do that with my kids now. When I was younger, I wasn't smart enough, and they come to me with stuff now, and I do the same thing. I'm like, well, what do you think, and what is important to you? And here's, same thing. Here's something that I could relate to that happened to me when I was younger. And here's what I learned.
Yeah.
And
it was always, you can't disappoint me. Like, don't worry about that.
Yeah. Right.
Do you know what I mean? I was never like, is my dad gonna be ashamed or angry or reject or like, it was like it's like his sort of thing is looking at me saying, you don't have that power to disappoint me. Like, it's,
right. Which is great.
Yeah.
But and that's all the kids really want to know, and I learned it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, and as a parent, to set them free and be there to help them once they fall. That's all.
Very cool, man. Thank you for sharing all that. I really enjoyed that. Okay, so you step out on your own. Records, cassettes start selling. You start getting asked to perform. You start performing. What were some of the challenges early on? As far as now, you're like suddenly, oh my God, I'm a solo artist. What were your challenges as far as getting things moving?
Well, the hardest thing I think also is, this is before independent musicians. There was no such, like that phrase as almost a genre or a business genre didn't exist, right? There's only really one path: get a record contract, get a management company, fall into line, and so like I'm sending out my cassettes to all the major record labels and booking agents, and I was always been a little bit off the center. My music isn't weird or anything, but it was never, is it pop? Is it folk? Is it,
it's not mainstream.
It's not mainstream. It's very listenable. But everybody would always say, like, we love you, you're doing a great job, but we don't know what to do with it.
We don't know where to put you in the record store. What category?
What category is this? Yeah.
Right.
And so I think for me, the hardest thing was to break out of the mold of how you do this and think differently. And the guy that helped me with my first record, Dave Zaglinski, I went to him and I said, boy, what do you think? And he for one, he really thought I needed help with details, and I'm not a detail guy, and keeping business straight and all that. And so he came along and said, how about if he helped pay for my second record. And he said, why don't we become business partners on your music? And so we did. And so he started showing up to these little concerts and realized that the sound was really shitty. So he started bringing PAs and good mics from the studio, and he started doing sound. And then he realized that I was never getting back to the back to sell the cassettes because I'd be talking. So he set up a little table and he started to be there. And then he thought, oh, we should get one of those click credit card machines because people don't always have cash. And then he said, Steve, why don't we offer, if you buy two, you can have a third for free? And like, he just started thinking innovatively, even in terms of churches, like, how do you get a gig? Like, so this is not the same as sort of getting on at like a folk festival circuit. There was no circuit. So you'd phone up a church and say, can I do a concert at your church? And they don't have any money and all that. And so Dave would say, well, how about if we don't charge you? Why don't we come and why don't you give us your support and we'll give you 10% of the door?
Oh, okay.
Right. And so in biblical terms, that's called tithing.
Yeah, right, right.
And every pastor gets that. And they kind of go, okay, I'm not.
So that was an easy yes. That was an easy yes.
Well, then they'd say, but we don't do posters, and okay, we'll do them. We'll print them. We don't do tickets. Well, we'll do that. And so Dave, he just like just take away every objection and do it ourselves. And so we ended up forming what's now Signpost Music, but we're the promotional company. We're the marketing company. We're the booking agent. We are the road management. We basically, all those percentages that kind of go out for other people to collect, we just kept them in house.
Right.
And then rather than hiring somebody for 20% of their time to do a poor job for us, we just started hiring people to work for us. And so now we have 3 staff. And so it kind of just rolls along. We don't make a ton of money, but enough. We have no debt. We have no, and so we kind of kept everything in house. And it was really kind of funny because I remember when was it like that? The mid 90s, just started hearing about this independent musician. What's an independent musician? And we're like looking at it going, we've been doing this now for a long time.
Yeah.
And so we kind of did it naturally. It wasn't a strategy, but Dave had the ability to say, just because everybody else does it this way doesn't mean we have to, or even that we can. Yeah. And when we let go of the old model, you can start to imagine a new one.
Now, do you guys, the Signpost, have you taken on other artists over the years?
Yeah, we eventually became a record label for
Awesome.
not very long, for about 5 or 6 years, but it was, right before everything started crumbling. Retail started crumbling, radio started crumbling, all that, and so there came a point where we just sort of realized we couldn't invest in another artist and take a percentage back from them that could pay for our time and our effort and our investment that didn't make it impossible for them to make a living.
Yeah, right.
And so so there was a point we just phoned up all of our artists and we said, you can't afford to pay us and we don't want to charge you. We can't do it for free. So we gave everybody their albums back. We just said, here's all your stock. Here's your rights. We don't want any of that. God bless you. If we can help in any way, we can do it as a neighbor and a friend, but not as a business.
Sure.
And so
we
went back to just now being Steve Bell.
So it's probably so you guys have made a career together, building out. What a great story, man!
Yeah, we've been traveling together for over 30 years. We stay in the same hotel room. We're like an old married couple. Yeah, actually, people say how
fortunate it is that you guys, clicked and it worked out.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We have very different gifts, and like Dave seems to have gifts in all of my gap areas,
which is the best partnership ever, man.
And I have gifts in his gap areas, and so we don't fight. He's actually
make your decisions, he makes his decisions. You probably bounce them off each other for a second opinion, but
I know where his instincts are better than mine, and I don't really question them. And he generally knows where my instincts are better. And so there's never really much. He's a brilliant recording engineer. This studio was his commercial studio, and I just kind of inherited it in the deal. But I don't know how to run it. I'm not going to tell him what microphone to use on the guitar or how to mix a record, but he's not going to tell me how to do a song order for a concert, set list or, so it works pretty good. Actually, we never fight. We natter, but we don't fight. And
of course.
And it's been a really lovely relationship. Yeah.
That's cool, man. Congratulations to you both. Let's talk about some of my favorite tracks of yours. I went through your whole catalog. You got something called Moon Over Birkenau from your album Symphony Sessions. A very moving track. Obviously Birkenau was the location of the Auschwitz Nazi concentration camp.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that track? And did you do those string and piano arrangements as well? They were very beautiful, man.
Thank you. I didn't. I'll tell you about that in a minute. The song itself, I was in Poland, this would be early 90s, I guess. Doing concerts.
Touring or vacation?
Yeah, touring. Okay. And we were close to Auschwitz.
Sorry to cut you off, but so you guys are you've really done great where you're booking gigs all over Europe and everything.
Well, that wasn't a booking thing. There was a Catholic priest who was a friend of mine who was going to do some youth events over there. And he just knew he needed somebody to come do music. And so he basically said, will you come with me?
Wow.
And he was teaching, he was doing all kinds of stuff. And so it wasn't like a gig, like nobody was coming out to Steve Bell gigs.
Right. Okay, I get you.
They were coming to an event, and I just happened to be one of the contributors.
The guests.
So
that's
so
cool.
We're over there. Oh, I just pulled my thing out here. Hold on. You there?
Yep.
Okay, so we're over there, and at one point we were close to Auschwitz, and I remember saying to our host, I'd like to go. I had always found all that morbidly fascinating.
Yeah, I agree.
And so here I am. I would like to go, and he said, you really shouldn't go. And I said, why? I've read the books. I know what happened there. He says, no, you don't, because it's something happens to your soul there. This is not about collecting data. He says, when you see it, it's different than when you read about it. And I didn't believe him. And so I went, and I just sort of went in there and walked through these haunted places, and having no idea how it would affect me. Came home. It was devastating. I wept through the whole place, and it is very different being there. But if you've been there, in parts of it anyways, that the Nazis photographed everyone they killed. And so there's these 8x10 black and whites of these gaunt pictures, and they're all over the hallways and everything. You just see thousands and thousands and thousands as you kind of go down these different museum-y kind of places. And so just keep that in the back of your mind. So about 6 months later, I sat down to the piano one day, and I wasn't thinking about Auschwitz at all. but this melody started to form, and I'm not even a piano player. I'm just a hack. I can't play the song you
All
heard.
you guys say that. I'm like, you come on here with these arrangements, and I'm like, come on.
Yeah, but so this song started coming, and with it came like tears, like just massive emotional out. And why? What is this about? So the next day I sat down again to work on it again. Like I had to stop. Like the emotion was really, really strong, but I didn't have any idea what it was about. Third day I sat down, started to play it again. And just as the emotions were coming, boy, it's like I started, I keep on pulling my headset out. As I was starting to play, all of a sudden, bam, one of those faces, one of those black and whites was in my, and then bam, another one, then bam, another one, bam. And I started getting pummeled by these faces that I had walked by in the, there's your cat. And all of a sudden I realized, this is what I'm dealing with, the grief or whatever it is, the trauma of having been there. But within a few minutes, I'm literally on the floor holding my stomach, just in pain, like from what I had. So then I realized
you kept seeing these. You kept seeing these faces.
I kept seeing these faces, and I realized that this melody that's coming out is trying to my own psyche trying to work out this trauma event that I had experienced. So, the song got finished, but a couple nights later, I'm lying in bed, and I haven't told my wife about this experience. I haven't told anybody. I'm just like, I've never been so overwhelmed before. And we're lying in bed, and the moon was coming through the window, and she's asleep, and she's a very beautiful woman, and this gorgeous light was on her face, and she's safe, and she's resting, and she's beautiful. And I'm kind of looking at her, and I'm looking at the moon and realizing that moon had been over Auschwitz about roughly 12 hours earlier.
Oh,
so the same moon that shone on the horror of Auschwitz is now shining on the beauty and the safety of her. And somehow so the song is beautiful, but you can sort of sense that there's another thing to it. So that's the moon over Birkenau, the same moon that's over there shone on us, and sort of realized by for no fault of my own or blessing, I didn't have to deal with that. Nobody I know has had that kind of trauma. And so you think even what's happening in Gaza right now, like, nobody I know personally has to deal with that kind of terror and fear and deprivation, so it's just this weirdness about why us and not them, and why them and not us. And so there's the song.
I like that, how you were able to frame that, like, wow, that's the same moon that was over Birkenau 12 hours ago.
Yeah.
That was really clever.
Well, it just happened, and so then there's the title, Moon Over Birkenau. Yeah.
Great, beautiful track, man.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
And piano arrangements.
Mike Jansen. So he's my piano player. He's toured with me for over a decade. Whenever I do band stuff, a brilliant piano player. And several years ago, 2007, the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra asked if I would do a concert with them. And he was the guy that did all the scores for the symphony.
Oh wow! The arrangements are.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
They're first class, man. Really good stuff.
He's my piano player, but he's Mike Jansen. He has his own career and his own. Just did a concert with him in his band in Calgary last week to 1,000 people. Like, it's just like he's got his own. Man. He's got his own thing going. He doesn't need me, but we do like working together.
Yeah,
and he is a brilliant. He's a jazz pianist guy. He's composer, singer. But he's got this serious, like, he's actually educated, like he not like me, like I'm just sort of a hack that got good, but he's
I know what you mean.
But he's done the work, he's done the homework, he's one of those guys.
We did a great job on that.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Next track, Good Friend, off your album Kindness. So this is the opposite track. It's a very lighthearted, positive feeling track. What's the backstory to that song?
That was I had come out of a long or I was in a long, it was actually, okay, try not to tell too long of a story. I'd experienced another trauma in my life, and that was going into West Bank in 2004. I went over to Israel because I'd been starting to hear about, the what was happening to Palestinian people in that narrative. And I know this is a very tender topic right now, but I did go into West Bank, and I started to realize, the horrible situation that those folks find themselves in. And it's complicated. I'm not going to pretend it isn't.
Sure.
But a lot of innocent people suffer on that side of the story profoundly. And I came back, and it kind of just, I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to talk about it here. And like, people just hear one side of a story and think they know it, and they don't.
Well, it's so politicized.
And it's
That's
so
part of the
politicized.
problem.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. And it kind of shut me down. It really depressed me for several years. And I stopped writing. I wasn't, I think 3 or 4 years, I didn't write anything.
For 3 or 4 years?
Yeah. And finally, a friend of mine, a woman, a singer-songwriter, asked me how things were going. And I said, I think I'm done. I don't think I have anything left in me. And she just says, no, I think you probably do. You just maybe need to get away. And she's this kind of hippie chick that built the straw bale cabin in southern Manitoba, and so she gave me the keys, and she says, it's not fancy. There's no internet. There's no TV. She says, don't take books. Don't take, just, go and sit. And she says, don't take booze, water and bread and cheese, and just stay simple and wait.
And you did that?
And I went down for 5 days.
By yourself or with your wife?
By myself. By myself.
Really? That's pretty open-minded.
And one day I was sitting out in the yard, and as I sort of sat there, and I just started feeling the goodness, the symphony of creation, and I started to notice little bugs, and I started to notice birds I'd never noticed, and I started noticing the sound of the leaves in the wind. And a little frog goes over my feet, and then there's a little periwinkle flower. I just started noticing, and it just started to feel very.
After how many days?
This is about the 4th day.
So it was like,
and this
time was almost.
yeah. And no songs had come. I was just sort of sitting there. And then I kind of sunk into a contemplative state. I was just so gorgeous. I just sat and didn't want to move. And I sort of felt that my feet kind of grew into the ground, and I just sort of became part of it. And then as the sun went down at night, I just sat there literally for hours. The sun goes down, of course, then all of a sudden the moon and the stars come out. And of course, they'd always been there. It was just too bright to see. And you just sort of realize how vast and gorgeous and symphonic this whole thing is. And then that song came.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, I've had, you just inspire me, because I've had periods of time in my life where, I'm down about something. And even my wife has said, hey, why don't you just go visit one of your friends or do something like that? And I've never done it because I said, well, it's not going to help me. But hearing this.
Yeah. You know what? Even better than going to visit a friend, if you can get away somewhere where you can just, and again, it's not, you don't have to be like a mystic guru or anything, but just to be quiet, and to be out in create. And I'm not, I don't like bugs. I don't like mosquito bites. I don't like exerting myself. I don't like hiking, but there's something about sort of having your feet on ground that has been relatively undisturbed in an environment that's been relatively undisturbed, and being just quiet. And to realize, that's when you realize that you're part of something. You're part of something way beyond anyone's comprehension, even the greatest scientist, even the greatest, spiritual mind. You belong to this gorgeous cacophony, which is symphonic and all that kind of stuff. And there's just something healing about that. And then to realize
you didn't bring books with you.
Yeah, I think I took one. I did this a second time where I took a book and on Saint Francis of Assisi, and a song came out of that, the book and the experience. But not always. I find, once you sort of get into that state, you're really not looking for an external input like a book.
That's what I'm hearing.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's good
if
sometimes you sort of need it, like, because I'm very ADD. Sometimes I just kind of need something to focus my mind, but just sort of be there and basically give yourself to the environment and let yourself feel the connectedness of it.
You just had a notebook. You need a notebook with you. That's all to jot down ideas.
And for me, have your guitar. If the song comes, you want to have your guitar there, right?
Sure.
But I don't sit there and try to write. It's more, if it comes, it comes, but it doesn't have to come, because the experience itself is healing, grounding. It brings some resilience, and there's a restoration aspect to it. It doesn't mean that all your pain and anxieties go away, but there's you go back into you go back to the world that hasn't changed at all, but you have. you're operating out of a different center. You're not operating out of the anxiety of the modern age, out of the power struggles. You sort of realize, no, there's a deeper benevolence, which I intuited as a child, like I told you about, that you're part of. And that's just a different way of looking at the world and engaging in the world. You have patience, you have empathy, you have more kindness, but you're not trying to make it happen. It's actually there.
Right.
Because you've had this. So I don't know, like I don't do it every year, but I try to make sure that at least once a year I get away for, 2 or 3 days. And it feels indulgent, especially since I'm away from my wife already a lot.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. So
it's a lot to ask.
Yeah, you didn't even speak to her, did you? Because you said there was no phone connection or no cell service.
No, that time, that was before. That time was before cell phones. Yeah.
Oh, so you like literally, like you gave your wife a hug and a kiss at the door and said, "Honey, I'll see you in 5 days," and then you literally, days. Wow, okay. Yeah.
But that was back when that was your only option. Now I do take my cell phone and I do phone every day if I do this, and you don't want to do it all the time. I mean, you have obligations and duties, and you don't want to leave life to your partner to take care of everything.
Sure,
but
right.
If you're going to do output at the level that I have to, or musicians have to, you've got to find a place for input. Like you got to, So to not create a space where the cosmos can feed you is probably just not wise.
Okay, so man, you've inspired me. And not that I'm looking forward to the next time I get down or depressed, but at all. Yeah. But and it doesn't happen a lot because I'm a pretty positive guy in general, too. And I don't things don't get me down really. But I'm human, and I do get down once in a while. And I think next time that happens, I'm going to do that.
Let me encourage you. Do it before it happens. Like
okay.
Do it before. Preventative medicine. Like go do it. I mean, I typically am not like you. Like I do it now. Like, I'm a mess. I'm depleted. I better go fill up. But a few times I've thought in advance, like, what if we just do it before I get to that point? Yeah, and that's wonderful too. You kind of go and you can go sit, as long as you have the support of your business and your spouse and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Because you don't want to feel guilty while you're out there. But,
that's probably why most of the time I didn't go, because I'm like, I'm going to go around, I'm going to go, for me, it'd be sitting on the beach somewhere, or not even on the beach, but sitting in a relaxing, rent a small room.
A little cabin somewhere.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Maybe I should do that. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is good food for thought, man.
It's a good practice. Like all the mystical traditions, like the prayer traditions, whether it be Buddhist or Christian or Hebraic or Islam. I mean, the idea of the prayer retreat is getting away and is quite. I mean, it's a standard spiritual practice.
Yeah. Okay.
And usually there's some element of fasting. I mean, leave the booze at home. Leave the toys at home. You're there. You're there to work, but it's a different kind of work.
Right. I would bring cigars though. I can't.
Oh yeah. Well, of course you take the cigars.
Yeah. I can't I can leave booze. That's not a big deal, but I gotta have a cigar to. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, man. That's a good story. This is like therapy for me. Usually my guests come on like, Craig, this is very therapeutic. Like I feel like that. So thank you, man. This is like, I'm learning a lot. Judy's Garden off the album, No Words. Short track, but man, it's really lovely. I hear the slide, the Hammond B3 in the background. And was that you playing 2 acoustic guitars over 2 separate tracks?
No, this one acoustic guitar track, and then the slide is Joey Landreth. I think you know that.
Yeah, I know Joey. I had him on the show here. Yeah. He's a really good player. Nice guy,
so he just sort of came in with his dobro and just played over top. The organ, the B3.
Smart musician, good musician.
He's brilliant. He's one of my favorite. I just saw the brothers Landreth in Calgary a week ago with their new tour. It's easily one of my top 5 concerts of my life.
Really? Okay,
they just get better and better and better, And Murray was in the band, so was Joey, his brother.
Oh, cool.
Those Murray guys was a second guitar player.
So nice. Yeah.
Murray operates out of this studio quite a bit.
Does he?
A lot of his, we sort of make it available to him, and he brings a lot of his guests in here and
that's cool.
But
He's a lovely guy, man. He really is a sweet guy.
He's a sweetheart. Yeah. And then the B3 is a guy named Brent Barkman out of Toronto.
Okay.
He's just kind of
I love B3.
Yeah, he's just one of the tastiest. You can give an album to him and you can say, and this is the thing, Brent, I want you to play on every song, and I don't want to hear you once. And he can, and he can just pad out not classic rock and roll B3 sounds, but he just knows how to just pad out stuff. We don't really notice them, but man, there's an emotional gravitas that comes.
That beat, it's nothing
brilliant.
like a B3, man. It just feels so good.
One of the most expressive instruments ever made. Yeah. So that's just the three of us on that.
Beautiful, lovely track, man. What I had a question on that record in general, the engineering and mic placement was phenomenal. And I'm not saying the others weren't good, but the recording on that one was just different, at least to my ears. Is there a reason why, or
not that I know of? I mean, it's like Dave Zaglinski has done all my recording, but for a couple of projects. So I don't know. I mean, it could have been the barometric pressure and the wood was sounding good that day, or maybe my fingernails were just like, it's hard to, like, you know what I mean? Like some days, like you almost can do no wrong, and other days you can, like, nothing's working, and that was just one of those days that it sounded good. There was a microphone, there was a guitar, there it was, So
it was really great.
Yeah, I wish there was a more scientific approach to how you can take a previous success and replicate it, but we haven't figured that out.
Yeah. Steve, top 3 musical experiences you've had, and what made them so memorable?
Well, I think any musical experience where I feel like a flow, like if I have a bad concert or a good concert, isn't really to me about whether I performed well or I sang on tune or I played well. It really comes down to did I forget myself, and did something else kind of take over? And I can just talk about flow. Like, you get in the river and you float along. At the end, someone says, "What was the third song?" I don't know. Like, I don't. What's that thing you said after this? I don't know. Like, I just, it's sort of like, remember you were a kid and you had time and you could hang out with your friends till 4 o'clock in the morning. You talked all night long. It was the best night you ever had.
Yeah.
And then someone says, "Well, what did you talk about?" I don't know. Like, that really didn't matter. And so, in general, the best gigs are when the flow happens, and the worst gigs are when the flow doesn't happen. I can play perfectly and sing perfectly, but if I'm thinking about it, and that if I don't at any point get into the river, I feel like I failed.
So when you're somehow like completely in the moment.
Yeah. You get into that moment, and then you're just running on instinct, and you're not measuring. Like, how was that? Was that a 10? Was that a 5? I don't know. Half the time I don't even you're not even looking at a set list. You just, here's the next song. You just kind of know what to do next. And so I've had several of those, but specifically, one of the I did an album called Burning Ember, and that was the first album that I felt. That was my third album, I think. I'm with Dave, and there was something about that record that just, again, flowed. I wasn't stressed. Just everything we tried worked. And I remember listening to when we finished the mixes. This is the back of the day when you actually had your hands on the board. Like, it wasn't, and even mixing was like a performance. Like, I'm going to boost the snare drum here, and he's going to boost the guitar section. You actually practiced a mix. You
weren't on a screen where you could let me just have them automatic.
You can't save anything. You just actually have to practice your mix and then do it. And I just remember the two of us sitting here, and there's a song called Nevermind, and I just remember as it was happening, I just felt like it was enchanted, like the whole thing. So that was a major thing. Another one was the first symphony concert I did. I got asked by the Winnipeg Symphony to do a thing, and that was nerve-wracking. I just, like, can I know how to be myself on a stage with 70 people behind me, all at the top of their game, and there was from the very first note of that concert, it's like pixie dust just came down and just became a magical evening. And that'll be a life memory. Like,
that's really sweet.
On my deathbed, I'll be remembering that one, going, thank you. That's
dude, let me tell you, that's the most important things in life that you're doing, like, and I try to tell my kids that, like, if they're should I buy this or that? I'm like, it doesn't matter.
No,
There's nothing you're going to buy that like
yeah,
when you're, and sometimes I use that analogy when you're on your deathbed, but when you're thinking about what was good in your life, nothing's going to ever come up.
no,
Well, that XYZ that I bought. And I'm like,
no,
you're thinking
no.
way too much about the real value of this. It's
Yeah.
your time, that's what
But
counts.
I remember a particular date I went on with my wife, and it's like, and there was the flow. I mean, the conversation was there, and the wine pairing was perfect, and like everything just like, and you're just like taste this. No, you taste this, and what about all that, and you just have
That's
these
magic,
nights where
man.
you're not making it work. You're not working at all. Like you're in something, and those are the things you don't forget, and those are the memories that'll sustain you if you get to have memory. Like when I have a mom who's lost most of her memory.
Sorry, man.
But I think even then, though, I think those things are there. They have formed you. Like, so even if you can't pick up that memory, it's still part of your makeup, and that you had real beauty in your life. There was moments of real integrated gorgeousness. And that can happen in a concert, that can happen in a conversation, that can happen to a mechanic that listens to a car and just knows exactly what's wrong, knows if I just turn this knob, that thing's going to hum. They don't know why they know that, they just do. Like all that, or the baker that just kind of knows that this time it needs a little bit more salt or a little bit less fat or whatever. And they can't teach it. They can't, if you write it down as a recipe, you can't replicate it. It is what it is, and so those are the moments. And I think in our industry, in our work, you get moments of that. But other people do too. Teachers, they all of a sudden they're teaching things they didn't know they knew. It's that whole flow thing. Sorry, I keep on pulling up my headset. It is just so magical and hard to explain, but you live for those moments. They're the best.
How long have you been with your wife?
Sorry, one more time.
How long have you been with your wife?
42 years this summer.
Awesome, man. God bless you. That's awesome, man. That's cool. That's cool.
She's a pretty wonderful woman.
That's cool. Well, you know what, man? I don't think you survive a long-term relationship, and if you're still happy, unless you're feeling that way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's got to be pretty miserable, actually, if you're not feeling that way.
No, there's no. I mean, we haven't always felt the most affectionate towards each other like all the time. But I don't think there's ever been a moment where I didn't deeply respect her.
Yeah.
She's a good woman,
Sure.
and a fine human being in general. And so, I mean, the respect kind of carries you through the times when the affection isn't quite there. I mean, you just, and I'm not saying it's not there. I'm just saying that everybody has those times.
Man, you have this life is like this, as it's just the way life is. Yeah.
But there's a deep respect there that kind of carries you through until those feelings come back again. And that's always a lovely day too. Yeah.
42 years. Congrats, man.
Thanks.
When we first spoke, you mentioned to me, you said something that was really interesting. You said, Craig, I've built a very loyal and dedicated following over the years as an independent musician. What do you attribute this to beyond the fact that your fans love what you do musically, obviously? More like the work involved, like that didn't happen by accident is what I'm saying. You had to do certain deliberate things in the building of your business or your fan base or the building of Steve Bell as an entity in music. What were some things that you did that you think helped you develop that loyalty in the fan base?
Well, I think early on is my first instinct that you always kept in touch with anybody that bought anything for you, anybody that came to a concert, anybody that wrote you a check, anybody that said a kind word, like keeping email lists and even at concerts, in the early days, I remember the first, this was not a strategy, but the first, we started keeping at like mail lists. This is before email. So we'd say to people at concerts, if you enjoyed the concert, if you want to hear about the next one, would you give us your address? And so we started keeping these things. And then one year I started recording a bunch of Christmas songs just for friends and family. And I thought, it's not that bad. Like it wasn't thinking of it as being an album. And then Dave and I decided, why don't we just send this out to everybody before Christmas? And so we had at that point, we had about 700 people on our little mailing list. And so we made a 5-song cassette and sent it out to 700 people saying, thanks for coming to my concerts.
Oh my
this isn't
God.
this isn't a pro.
Imagine
it's not a pro
what that
album.
did for you.
It was just a couple guitars and a bass and a few, like I'd sang my own, like it was just very homespun. I mean, it was nice, but it wasn't trying to win a Juno.
It was a gift.
It was just a gift, and I tell you, that probably did more than anything. Like, we still have people that could not believe we did that. It wasn't just a free thing. It seemed to actually matter. It seemed to be valuable. They loved it. That won us.
When do you get stuff for free?
I know, but stuff that actually matters, like
right. But when do you get stuff like that?
Ever.
Never.
And again, it wasn't a strategy. Like, we honestly. And here's the thing.
Hey, man, we appreciate your support. Thank you.
Yeah,
we're going to spend $3 of our time and money, and it's worth it for us to give it to you. Yeah.
Gratitude can't be a strategy.
No.
People sniff through that in a nanosecond,
Absolutely, man.
And I think, if you're going to be a public musician and you want loyal fans, boy, you better love them as much as they love you.
You better sincerely love them. And because like what you just said, people sniff out bullshit right away.
Really fast.
You send them a, hey, I sign up and I'll give you my latest single for free. Well, like, if you're giving it to everybody for free and you don't even know us, what does that mean? I mean, it's a promo. We get it, but like, you're better off just saying, hey, not saying that's not incentive. Nobody's signing up to your list to get your free single. You can go on friggin' Apple or Spotify and get it.
No, but here's what happens. Okay, so we started keeping a mailing list, and we started, we'd let people know, like, we'd send them out a newsletter every year, and I'd make it funny, and there's always an, oh, by the way, if you want to buy my new record, here it is, or whatever. Sure. There's always that piece of it. It is a promotional thing. But then what it ended up happening is that in 2008, when the finances went out, when the economy crashed, and all these Christian bookstores crashed, and then soon after that, everybody started going to online platforms for music, and we started losing a huge portion of our income generating world. Like all of a sudden there was like nothing there. We lost half of our income in a matter of about 2 years. It all kind of crashing down.
That was like the worst recession we've had during our lifetime.
Unbelievable.
That was brutal.
But it also happened right after that came online streaming, and so even when the economy came back, we had lost a whole income generating method.
Right. What do you have to sell?
What are you going to do? And so then at that point we have this mailing list, and here's the thing: we were able to sort of say, hey, we can't sort of generate the income we used to generate. If you actually like what I do and you'd like to see it continue, would you help? And I've got now people that give me $20 a month. I've got, hundreds of people who have loved what we've done all along, and they see it as a partnership.
Right.
They want other people to experience what they've experienced. They love me. They love the music. They want to hear next record. And I've got quite a number of people that send me a monthly donation. But it started way back in the day when we sent them a cassette.
Yeah. And I bet you've had people that have been on that list since day one that are still contributing. Yeah. Let me tell you.
Then of course you start meeting them at concerts. A lot of these people are now friends, and then I sing at their kids' weddings, and like it actually becomes an actual community. Like,
that's cool.
Yeah.
I never understand. Well, first of all, what you did, I've been a marketing person since 2000. Back in the day, I've written direct mail, I've written newspaper ads, magazine ads, and that working your list, that's your most valuable asset. And I mean, it's great that intuitively you somehow said, well, let's do this because that's magic. And I mean, hats off to you for doing that and for understanding that for someone who's not a marketing person, honestly.
Yeah, no, we didn't realize at the time how important it was. It just, it was kind of a natural thing, but it's really what's carried us through. And it's why we're putting out our 23rd album when we have no debt, and, so that's awesome. It's all part of it. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Congratulations. What a smart thing to do. Steve, tell me something that you thought would be difficult to do, but in reality turned out to be easier to do.
A couple of years ago, people started asking me if I'd ever give retreats. They sort of wanted, like, they wanted to hear my music, but they wanted more about what we're doing. Like how do you think about things, you know?
Yeah.
And I said, oh goodness, no. I mean, I can't do that, you know. And finally, someone convinced me that I should do it like a day-long retreat, like a spiritual retreat.
Sure.
What have I got to say? I'm a nobody. I didn't go to, you know, theology school. Like, you know, like I really have no business saying anything.
Well, you
but
do if people want to hear it.
But yeah, I did. So I finally did say yes. I just stressed so much. I over prepared. I read books. I came up with a whole teaching thing and all that kind of stuff. And in the end, I'm glad I did all that work. But in the end,
I just want to hang out, man.
People just wanted to hang out, and they just wanted to hear, like, you know, one of the nice things about getting older is that you just naturally have something to offer, and you don't really have to think about it. You don't really have to prepare, not that much anyway. And that people just want to hear what you think you know. And if you can offer it humbly, you're not saying you have to think how I think.
Sure.
You're just sort of saying, this is what I got after, you know, I'm 63 years old. This is what I got right now. And offer that with an open hand, like my dad would to me, what his wisdom, you know, and people love it. So I remember I was almost going to throw up that people could give me fairly decent money to spend a day or two with me. I better deliver, and realizing that all they ever wanted from me was what I've been giving them all along anyway.
Right.
So learning to trust your own thing. Of course, I do some work, and of course, I do some research, and of course, I try to really think through what I actually think is important or not. But in the end, it wasn't anywhere near as
that's good,
as
man.
Bad. Yeah.
So you do that annually now?
Oh, I do. I just did one in Calgary last Saturday. I had 50 men from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m, and did 4 sessions, man. And it was just really fun. Yeah. So I do it 2 or 3 times a year. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. You know, it's funny going back to Bill, you know, saying thank you to your fan base. You know, when I'm a very humble guy. Like, I realize there's a million things people could do with their time. If you want to listen to my show, man, I'm super grateful for that. You got a lot of choices out there.
Yeah.
I went to NAMM back in 2020 in LA, and to my surprise, people were coming over to me and say, "Hey, Craig, I listened to your show." And I was like, "Oh my God, you know, thank you so much."
Yeah.
And I was, part of me is like, why would you do that?
Yeah, I know.
not like imposter syndrome, but like, you got, you know, like, it was.
Well, okay, here's the thing though. I've thought about this, right? And so wherever you are, whatever stage you're at in your gift, like, so whatever stage I'm at as a guitar player, say, or as a songwriter,
sure,
chances are I like work that's better than what I do. Right. And as I get better, I can actually appreciate greater work. Yes. And so the good stuff, the really good stuff, is always in advance of you. You never get to the point where you think, I'm now a master. It's sort of like, I'll never arrive. Like, I'll never become a great, but it's because your catcher's mitt for goodness is just growing. Right. And so it should be that way, but it shouldn't be imposter syndrome. That's like, imposter syndrome would be, say, therefore I have nothing to offer.
Right.
You
right.
know?
No, I don't feel I have nothing to offer, but it was just like,
but at this stage of life, you know, people like, we actually we're, I'm just going to say it, we're good at what we do, right?
Okay.
And we should be unabashed about that. I'm not the answer to everything. I'm not the best at the world, but I've put in the time. I'm good at what I do, and I don't. I can be humble. I don't have to be arrogant about it. But I think I can say now, finally, I'm a decent songwriter. I'm a decent guitar player.
Oh, dude,
I put on a good show.
Good songwriter,
you know, man. So it's just, you know, but if you listen to what I listened to, you know, you'd realize I haven't arrived, and I should never arrive.
I never arrive. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is, it really amazed me because there were people there that I went over to introduce myself to. A couple of people that I'm not going to mention names, that are pretty well known online, that I think they had mentioned my show, and I went over to thank them for mentioning the show. And I'll never forget, both of these guys did the same thing. It was like, I went, "Excuse me, you know, so-and-so, my name is Craig Garber." And I just started introducing myself, and like, they were like, yeah. Literally like that. And then, like, you know, a better offer came along. I was like, wow. How does he know I wasn't going to just say, "Hey, I'd like you to speak at my next event and give you 10 grand"? Or, I mean, like,
I know.
How do you be such a dick? Is what.
Yeah.
Like, even if look, you don't have time, you're busy. fine. I get it. I'm not
Yeah.
looking to become your best friend. I just want to say
Yeah.
thank you for whatever
Yeah.
you did. You know, it was just, I don't get that.
I know,
It's a
but
weird thing.
yeah, but I know, and it's unnecessary, right?
It's just like,
yeah.
I'm not looking to exchange phone numbers and like, let's go out with our wives. I just want to say thank you for mentioning you don't know who I am even. It was
like, I think
that.
a good spiritual practice in general is always the person in front of you is the most important person in the world right now.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't mean that your grandkids who are not there, or your friends, or, but right now, this is who's in front of me. This is who I am supposed to cherish. This is the mystery that I can actually see with my own eyes.
Right.
And so to attend to what's in front of you is, I think, the most important thing. Of course, sometimes you have to say, hey, buddy, I got to run, I got a meeting or whatever. Right. And hopefully
totally cool. Yeah, of course. But just like, not to like, literally the guy went, and like shoved me aside for the guy who had more value to him. And I was like, okay, like, I don't care. It's not personal. I mean, I didn't really care. It was none of my business really what's going on, but
it's just
I always take note of these things. I'm like, interesting. Too. And then, I feel good that like, I'm not like that, to be honest with you. But if nothing else, you get to like, okay, well, I'm doing the right thing here, Well,
but, and notice how that makes you feel, and vow to never do that to someone else. I mean, it's just like,
of course, yeah.
So then that event actually becomes a gift to you.
Right. That's how I took it. I was like, okay, cool. I'm glad I just participated in this, and I got
noted. Yeah.
Note to self,
Don't do that to someone else. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just not my nature, but like I would, if I couldn't talk, I just would say, hey, excuse me, I'm right in the middle of something. Can I get back? Whatever, It's just a way of handling it. That's all.
Be kind and
be kind. It's like easy.
Be honoring. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I really like about what you did with your fan base. You were kind and honoring, and it worked. And not that you did it, it was sincere, and that people picked up on that sincerity, man. And that's what counts,
Yeah, it counts.
Low points. What were some of the low points, Steve, or dark periods you've had to deal with in life, and how'd you get through them?
Well, I mean, some emotional ones. I mean, I tend to be outwardly a cheerful person, but I actually feel things pretty inwardly. Like, I can get pretty low. And depression runs in our family. Both my mom and my dad suffered from chronic depression. I have been, laid out with it. So I have those natural sort of things. I tend to, be absorbed with the world's issues, things that I have no control over. So it's just sort of my nature. That's there. But then the other thing is just those times when you just can't see a way forward. And as a business, I remember, Dave and I were doing a series of concerts out in the East Coast, and we had traveled far, and it was expensive to get out there. And we had to think about 5 or 6 concerts in a row, and nobody was there. It was like 25 people here, it was just, and we're driving down the road after about the 4th, like, unsuccessful commercially, concert, and just depressed, and sort of think, I've been doing this for years and years. Like, you'd think there'd be a breakthrough by now, and why do we have to work all the time so hard, and why do we have to pivot all the time? Every time you think you got something down, then technology changes, and you can't sell a CD or whatever. And Dave was driving down the road. We're both quiet, and at one point he says, man, he said, let's give it another 2 or 3 months, and maybe if this doesn't turn around, maybe we should just do something else. And I'm going, yeah. And we sit there. And then we just burst out laughing. What else are we going to do? Like, there is no plan B. Like, this is who we are. This is what we did.
Open up your ice cream store.
Yeah. Like, what are we going to do? Yeah. Sort of. And it was kind of a funny moment when you sort of realize, no, that's like, this is what we're here to do.
Right.
And so let's be as good as we can back at home, so we can be as good as we can out here. Let's keep counts short. Let's work hard. Let's, if we have to trim, we have to trim, but we're here to offer the world our gifts in a good way. And that's what we're going to continue to do until we can't. And, so at a certain point, sort of realize this is the life you've been given. And, and so, we all suffer, boo-hoo, but You know, I don't want to diminish anybody else's suffering, and also,
I get it, but like, you're right. If you're not prepared to suffer, you're not prepared to be living. Honestly,
yeah, it is what it is, you know, and
right.
and
life's
so you
not
kind
easy.
of have to take it all in, And you also realize too, this all becomes the fodder for the work you're going to do moving forward. Every event, depending on how you receive it, fashions you, informs you into a person that people want to be around or not, or want to hear, And so even a negative situation, even a broken relationship, even when you're an absolute idiot and you hurt people, to pay attention, grow from it, and then that becomes, even the negative becomes part of the positive eventually.
Yeah, if you make it that way, yes.
Yeah,
it's all up to you, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hey, let's talk about your gear for a minute. What is your go-to guitar, and what other two guitars would round out your top three?
Well, my go-to guitar that I play is a Stonebridge OM, and is that
a Godin? Does that make Stonebridge?
Nope. So the guy that builds them, what's the name? He's from Eastern Europe. There, he's a builder. Can never think of his name. It's a funny name. You'd probably know it if I. But they brand it as Stonebridge in North America, and I don't know why. It's a great instrument. I can't tell you.
How'd you get turned on to it?
Well, I was at a music store in Nova Scotia, and it was after a concert, I realized my guitar cable was crackling. So I go to a music store. My manager and I were going to get a guitar cable. So he goes to get the guitar cable. And I just look at the guitars and I see Stonebridge. I've never heard of Stonebridge. So I pick it up and I started to play it and had an emotional reaction. This is my guitar.
Wow.
But
how good does that, dude? How good does that feel though when you like connect with a guitar like that?
It's just so me.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking it was like $3,000 or something. I can't justify it. I've got good guitars, so I'm inwardly already kind of grieving that I can't buy this guitar. No,
you got to change that. You got to inwardly start thinking about, I can get rid of this on reverb. My buddy wanted to.
Well, what happened was Dave came around, and the other thing is that it's a business thing. So every penny I spend is half of it is his money.
Right.
So because we're partners on all things Steve Bell. He comes around the corner. Here's it goes. That's your guitar. And we it's the only time we've ever done this. We just bought it on the spot, and it's been the instrument I played the most. Now, the reason why I play it the most isn't because it's the best guitar and all. It's just the most well-rounded. It strums well. It finger picks well. It's got a short delay, so for finger style, you don't feel like you got your sustain pedal down.
Mm-hmm.
It's very percussive. I like it. But I have a Kevin Ryan as well, who's a brilliant builder. I've had that guitar the longest. I would have to say it's my favorite guitar of all time. It's just been through everything. It's just that I'm finding as my guitar, it's a big one. Like it's got the big sound, the massive bottom end. It's just like when you're in the room with it, it just feels great to play. I just sort of find that sometimes it's almost too much guitar. So the Stonebridge has some of that, but it also has a more sort of modest soundscape to it. And then I have, I just inherited a 1970 Martin New Yorker.
Oh, wow.
Which I've won. It's from a studio in Vancouver that I've recorded at. And I just always, if I could have any guitar in the world, that's the one I would want. And they just went out of business and they sent me the guitar.
That is awesome.
They knew how much I loved it. Right. So
that's really cool.
That one stays home. It wouldn't go out. And again, it wouldn't do everything well, but for the stuff that it's good at, it's just it's like butter. It's such a beautiful instrument.
That's nice.
Like if you know the guitars, it's just a tiny little. I mean, it was made for people like. It's sort of for it's kind of for like Joan Baez used to play one. It's kind of I don't want to say this, but it's kind of the chick guitar. Like it's small, right? And it's a kind of a folky thing that's not meant to be too boomy or whatever. It could be the closest thing to perfect balance. It's so gorgeous.
That's nice.
But they're small, so guys don't want to play them. It's
just that it's 1970. There's something special about picking up an instrument that's that old, man.
And who knows what conversations it's had,
Right.
But it is really one of the most beautiful sounding guitars I've ever. And playing, it's got a short scale, so it really feels really gentle on the fingers. It's just a really lovely. So that's the one I pick up all the time when I'm at home.
That's cool.
That's the one that makes me want to play. The other two are gorgeous guitars. But they're like my work guitars.
Your
And
work
this one is-
guitars.
yeah. They're all
Do you ever
brilliant. I mean, if I got stuck with only one of them, I don't know which one I'd pick, and I'd be happy with any one
With
of those
either
three.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever play electric?
Yeah. I sound like an acoustic guy playing electric. It just
What are you
Like,
playing?
it's
You're
just-
playing probably a Strat or a Tele, I guess.
I've had a Strat. I've got a Tele now, and I never really touch it.
Right.
And every once in a while I pick up a new pedal, thinking that's going to do something for me. And
Now
stuff.
I'll play electric.
Yeah,
No,
now I'll
not
play
really.
electric. No. It just doesn't sound right when I've got it in my hands. Yeah.
I get that, man. I totally
one
get
other
it.
guitar I have, just want to say is
Yeah.
there's a Canadian builder named Josh House.
Josh
I've got one of
House.
his as well. He's a really nice builder. That one just is a bit more of a compressed sound, and so it has lesser possibilities, but what it's good at, it's great at. Yeah. So
Very cool,
Yeah.
man. Hey, do you have a worst gig ever story?
yeah.
Tell me.
Back in my bar days, I was in this jazz fusion band, and we got booked at a military base to play the dance hall, and and whoever booked us had no idea that we were original band, and
Oh
and-
my God.
Oh,
I
it
thought
was
a
awful.
cover band was
they
showing
thought it
up.
was a dance. It was supposed to be like we get to and this isn't a club. This is a dance hall. It's Friday night, and these people are out there with their sweethearts. They want to dance. They want to hear the music that they love. And within 2 or 3 songs, it started to get a little hostile. And so,
Was it like,
and then by the end of the set, they were doing spitballs through big pens at us, like
oh my God.
and you get
no.
ping. By the middle of the second set, there was a guy up there with his hand around my saying, threatening that if we didn't start playing something that they knew and liked, there would be trouble. And we started like I remember my guitar player started doing da 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 da. Spend the last year in Rocky Mountain Way.
Oh, right.
And I didn't know the words. I knew the melody, and so I'm just phonetically singing this song. As long as you end up with ire, ire, you're going to be fine, right?
Yeah.
And so we did that. Place went nuts. That was the best thing. Then we started making up like disco-y songs on the spot. The bass player would just start with and we'd all fall in to a chord progression, and then I just start making up melodies and nonsense lyrics on the spot. But it was kind of in the zone that they wanted. We survived the night, but it was awful, and I was
That's scary, man.
I was actually afraid. Yeah.
Like Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
They're throwing bottles.
Oh man, yeah.
Hey, give me your top 3 Desert Island discs, in no particular order, and just for this moment, because obviously that changes.
Yeah. I thought about this, and thanks for sending me the questions in advance, because that'd be a hard one to answer.
That's a tough one, man.
Almost anything by Coburn. So I'd take his latest one, Bruce Coburn's new "Oh Sun, Oh Moon." I think it's at 78. I think it's one of his best records. I'd probably take Emmylou Harris's Angel Band, which is a bluegrass. That changed my life. I mean, the harmonies and the playing are so amazing. And it's not one of her big albums. It's just bluegrass gospel, like hardcore bluegrass. But okay, the name's gone on me already. Anyways, brilliant. The other one, weirdly, would probably be David Bowie's Black Star.
Really?
I love that record
That's
so much.
a very eclectic record. I love that record too, but it's not like Bowie, really. It's not mainstream Bowie. Yeah,
it's out there, and I'm normally not that kind of guy, but the first time I heard it, I went out of my mind. I just thought it was one of the most great. It's dark. I mean, it's not
very dark.
Yeah. And it was the album that he wrote.
He was dying.
He was dying, and he was the only one that knew. The band members didn't even know. So there's this, and he's sort of got his one foot in the netherworld and this dark mystery, and the other side is this sort of grief, piece. And there's just something about it. I don't know what it is. I just love the record. I love the playing. I love the arrangements.
Oh, it's a beautiful record.
Whenever I put on the first song, that's it. I know I'm in for an hour. I have to listen to the whole album. I can never listen to one song. I have to listen to the whole.
I'm going to listen to it later today.
It feels to me like one piece of work.
Yeah, it is like that.
And you'll never hear anything from me that sounds like I've been listening to that. Right? It's not my
No, it's
way,
not your thing at all.
I'm enchanted by it somehow.
I've had.
If I couldn't have those, I would. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I said if I couldn't have those, I'd take Alison Krauss's what's it called? New Favorite or something like that. I just love the sonics. I love the playing, the delicacy. the musicianship and how they interplay. I just find it just absolutely magical. I think it's really worth listening to over and over and over again.
I'm going to listen to Dark Star again later today. I think I've had every musician who played on that record with Bowie on the show, and all of them were like in awe of doing that record.
Oh man, I would love to talk to one of them about what that was like. Like, what did they hear? How did these songs, like, what, like, how does that start off? Like, I just find it just amazing, and what great players they are too.
Yeah,
everybody on there is like, wow, yeah, that's a magical record for sure.
All righty, tell me the strangest or most unexpected thing that's ever happened to you.
I think the most unexpected thing was when I got a call from Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra asking if I could do a concert with them. And I think when I first, because I used to play clubs and I'm known around Winnipeg as from those days, and so I sort of assumed they wanted me to do like a cover thing, like Dan Fogelberg, Kenny Loggins. Like I used to do that stuff, like some sort of like a memory lane, thing. And I said, I'm so honored. I said, but I'm kind of busy and I've got a lane now, and that would be a lot of work for one concert. It's not what I do, And they said, no, we want it to be Steve Bell songs. And this is a secular organization, and I said, have you heard my music? And I said, it's pretty Christian. I mean, I hope it's not annoyingly so, but it is what it is. And they said,
what it is. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. And they just said, well, no, symphony music and sacred text there's that's fine. And that was a big surprise. Like, and then
you're
I
just
thought,
like, no. I need more convincing that you actually want my song.
Yeah, it just didn't make sense to me, And then it ended up being and then Mike Jansen did those scores,
right?
Which became that album that you heard, Symphony Sessions. And I've gone on now to do about 35 symphony concerts across North America since.
That's so cool.
And that was something that happened to us that was not on the radar. We didn't plan it. It came out of nowhere. Other things have happened because we strategized and planned, but that was just sheer gift. I had no idea. And it's
aren't those the best things that come along though? Yeah, when it's like,
we didn't work for that.
Yeah, you worked for it. You just didn't work.
Right.
It's like, why do some doctors get to charge $10,000 or $40,000 for a heart surgery, and the other ones get to charge, $7,000?
Yeah.
Well, there's the reason. You worked for it. Yeah.
You did work for it, I suppose. Yeah, but it was certainly a surprise.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, like, can I carry a concert in front of like 70 brilliant music? Like it just. But it worked. It worked great. And well,
obviously, if you've done 35 of them,
yeah, and those have been highlights. Those would be deathbed memories for sure. Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, tell me a fun fact not many people know about you.
I think. Well, I don't know. I'm shy. I'm pretty gregarious on stage and all that. But I'm actually essentially a shy person. When I walk into a room, I'm comfortable. If I'm uncomfortable, I get. I mean, I want the attention in the sense that I want my business to do well, and so I'm glad if people think that I'm important, I guess. But I don't like it.
It's not about you; it's about what you're doing.
Well, I have ego. I'm not saying I don't suffer from ego, and I certainly do it as much as anybody else. But there's a shyness in my inside. Like when I was playing clubs, it was for 10 years. I didn't say a word almost. Like I never talked.
Really.
Yeah, and I'm known now as a storyteller, and that wasn't that at all. That sort of came out over the years, but yeah, I had to fight shyness a little bit. I mean, that's not a dark secret, but
Yeah. Well, congrats for doing a good job.
Thanks.
Most important lessons you've learned from getting older?
I would say, nothing matters and everything matters. Like whatever happens today, bad news, good news, it's not the end of the story. We have no idea what it means. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it all matters importantly. Like, do you know what I mean? So to pay attention again, I think, do you know the name Simone Weil? She's a French philosopher.
Don't.
And so last century, activist, a bit of a mystic, but her whole thing is she's French. She attend, attend to what's in front of you. What's the thisness of the moment? What's the thisness of the human being? What's the thisness of that lake or rock formation? And how you kind of, in a sense, to impregnate the other with your complete attention. And you realized how sacred every moment, every molecule, every engagement, every dialogue is. At the same time, no one's going to remember most of it.
Right.
Like it's, like a few years after I'm gone, there's going to be very few people that are going to remember. It is what it is, but it's all been sacred as well. So nothing matters. Everything matters.
Yeah.
I think
like that.
Yeah.
What do you like most about yourself?
That's really hard. I think I'm a lover. Like, I think I honestly love things and love people. And when I'm at my best, that's without any personal need attached to it. You know, I mean, that's not always, but I think I actually do love what I see for the most part. I think that's a good trait. And I think I'm somewhat affable. I think I'm reasonably likable. Again, not all day,
You're
every day.
You're convincing me.
But you know what I mean? Like, so I think those are good qualities. But I think also, you know what? I'll tell you what. Everything that I love the most about Steve Bell requires someone else for it to be true.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I'm a son. I need my parents to be a son. I'm a father. I need my kids. I'm a grandfather. I need my I'm a husband. I need my wife. I'm a neighbor. I'm a friend. I'm a public musician. Everything that I love about Steve Bell requires someone else for it to be true. And I feel that in my bones all day, every day. Yeah.
So maybe that's what you love most about yourself, is that everything you do is connections.
Yeah.
Or something
I think I could say truthfully what I love about myself is Alpha Marie Bell, Nancy Bell, Nitrob, Jesse, Micah, Sarah, and my neighbors and friends. I think I love that about myself. I think because that's what constitutes really who I am ultimately.
Gotcha. Yeah. Very cool, man. Yeah. Oh, this is good. Tell me your best childhood memory.
I mean, the one that just pops to mind is for Christmas one year, Mom and Dad got me one of these models, but it wasn't a plastic; it was a wood model of a caravan. And it was very complicated, and it was pieces of wood and cloth and metal and like kind of an old Western sort of caravan thing, and that it had wheels that turned and swung, and it was when I first looked at it, I think I was like 7 or 8. And I thought, I can't do this, and then my dad says, no, I bought it so we could do it.
Oh, man, that's the magic words.
Yeah, and that my dad bought me a gift that required him to be part of it. Like, he bought it so we could do something. I just remember.
That's really sweet.
And then working with my dad on that was just fun, and then in the end, and because my dad, who worked with tools and all that kind of stuff, it ended up looking fantastic. And then I'd hear him brag to my mom, look what Steve did, and thinking that and in my, whatever, sort of half thinking that, I was an important part of this.
That's
which
a cool experience.
But I was, yeah.
That's good, man. That's really good.
Yeah.
Has your life been different than what you'd imagined?
Yeah, entirely. Yeah. I thought I was going to be a high school band teacher, like I played trumpet and
saxophone.
And played saxophone I picked up later, but through high school I was in the high school band. I was a pretty decent trumpet player, and I was going to go to college and become a high school band teacher. That's what I was going to do. And then what happened was I kind of had a bit of a depression episode at the end of grade 12. I was accepted to a music school that fall, and I just couldn't go. I was not in mental good shape, so I phoned the trumpet instructor of the university who had sort of recruited me. And I said, I can't come this year. I'll come next year. And he said, that's fine. Sometimes you just need a break. And that was the year I started playing clubs.
Yeah.
Just basically to pass time. And and then that just became my life. And so, now I'd say, no, this is not the life I thought I was going to have at all. Yeah.
Interesting. Do you have any hobbies outside of music?
I wouldn't call them hobbies. I mean, I love to read, If there's one thing I do a lot, that's outside, but I don't even consider it outside of music though, because I have to read to write. Like it's so when I'm reading, I do it because I would choose to if I didn't have to, but I also know that I have to read in order to write lyrics, and so I don't have anything I would say that has a hobby that's divorced from, like, it seems like everything I do is connected to my vocation as a songwriter.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't play golf for,
No, you're playing guitar. Yeah.
If I have a hobby, I'd say it's watching hockey with my wife. Like, we like to watch hockey together. I call that a hobby, I suppose.
Is that a Canadian thing? Like, you can't really be Canadian unless you watch hockey?
Well, we weren't hockey watchers till COVID, and then
really?
We got locked down, and then we started watching hockey because we were home and had nothing else to do, and then we started really loving it, and now it's a thing. I would say it's a thing that we do. Like, we talk about hockey, we watch hockey, we make time for hockey, we go to hockey games, we have hockey jerseys. Yeah. So,
that's nice, man.
And it's kind of nice because it has nothing to do with her vocation. It has nothing to do with mine. Yeah, it's kind of something we could both come to from a different point and meet at this place.
And it's no stress.
It's no stress. Yeah.
It's one of those just like no stress things.
I'm not responsible for them getting to the cup, right?
Yeah, and like, you're not both mental hockey fans. Like, if they, if your team gets in and ours doesn't, this is a fun thing that you do.
Yeah,
together.
It's really fun. Yeah, it's a lovely. That's a lovely part of our later married life that I would never have seen coming, because I'm otherwise not a sports guy. Yeah.
It's funny because I used to watch basketball a lot years ago in the 90s, which is the last time the Knicks were in the playoff, and I would watch back because I'm from New York City, and because my younger son's a jock, and so he would, he started, and then we started watching. So we've gone through stuff like that. It's kind of cool when you do that, It is nice to do that.
Yeah, it is fun. Yeah. I love it.
Toughest decision you ever had to make, or most difficult thing you had to do?
I think the most difficult things for me ever is and we all experience when you have to let a friendship go. Something becomes toxic, or those are the hardest things. Those just feel like failures to me, or sometimes you have to let a friendship or relationship go, and this sounds so bad, but because you just don't have time, and
no, you don't have time for toxicity.
No, but even sometimes you don't like there's just only so many hours in the day, and you have your work and you have your family and all that kind of stuff. And then there's somebody who wants to be, and that under other circumstances wants to be like a daily friend, and you can't do it. Yeah. It's just not there, And so I've had a couple of those, and so when you have to, it's not like I phone up somebody and say, I'm letting you go now. That's not.
Hey, I just wanted to give you an official notice.
Yeah,
you're done.
Yeah. But when you sort of had to decide, I can't nurture this relationship, and it's got nothing to do with valuing it. It has nothing to do with the other person. It's not that. And those usually comes down to when you come up to your limits, and then especially as you get older,
boundaries. You got
to set boundaries, and also the older you get too. Like, I just don't have the emotional energy I had.
You get less tolerable because you got less time.
Yeah, you got less time.
Time's your most valuable asset. You can make more money. You can't make more time, man.
Yeah, that's just really, really true. So
hell yeah.
I find that hard. I'm a people pleaser. I hate being a disappointment to anybody.
I understand that.
Which is it's my superpower, and it's also my curse. And so those are the kinds of things I find the hardest is relational decisions.
Yeah, I get it. Just a couple of questions left, and thanks for everything. It's been such a joy to talk to you, man, and I appreciate you being so forthcoming. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's very mutual. It's just really nice to have a lovely interview that feels thoughtful. It's part of why you're successful, right? Is because most of us don't get this kind of interview. So thank you. Yeah.
Well, thanks, and thanks for saying that. It's kind. Best advice you've ever been given, and who gave it to you?
My dad on his deathbed.
What did he say?
Yeah, he was suffering really hard. He had a bad cancer, and
so sorry, man.
And it was awful. Thank you. And to watch my father suffer was brutal. And I remember being, by his bed, and he's just, as he breathes, he's shuddering in pain, and I'm kind of in panic, and I'm going, Dad, let's go online. Like, maybe there's some doctor in South America that we can fight, like whatever, like maybe there's an alternative thing. We could sell the house, we could sell cars. Like, this is your life. My dad just looked at me. He said, Steve, go away and make your peace with powerlessness.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he said, it'll go much better for you. And then he said, as a second, as an addendum to that, he says, and by the way, he said, I'm not scandalized by suffering. And he said, some of the most beautiful things have happened to me in these last months because of my suffering. He says, people touch me that have never touched me. People tell me they've loved me that have never told me they've loved me. People kiss me that have never kissed me before. And then he said, like, who wouldn't wish this on their best friend? And he didn't mean like who wouldn't wish suffering, you know?
Yeah.
But he was a guy that, like, yeah, this is unleashed tendernesses that wouldn't have happened, you know? So, I mean, that changes how you look at things, you know, like when someone you love, you know, and the authority of that is that they said it in the midst of suffering, right?
That comment, go away and make your peace with powerlessness. You know, I was always a guy that was very willful my whole life because I had to be. I grew up in a sketchy environment and everything was on me, and I had no guidance about anything. So I just knew, okay, if something's going to happen, I got to make it happen. Mm-hmm. The problem is when you grow up, nobody's there to tell you like, hey man, you don't have to act like that anymore. Things will happen naturally if they're supposed to. So I never learned that lesson. Years later, in my 50s, probably only in the last 5 to 6 years, I met a guy and he got me to work this program. It's called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. It's a 12, it's based on a 12-step program. Right. And we worked with each other, and he said something to me that was along this line, and this literally changed my life. He said, Craig, you know, don't be part of the results committee. He said, just do the footwork, because once you surrender, then you realize that you're not in control. There's a higher power in control of you anyway. Yeah. And nothing in my life has changed it as profoundly as that, because all of a sudden I didn't have this 1,000,000-pound weight of the world on me to make everything happen. I said, you know what? I'm going to give this up to you. Yeah. Whatever you think I should do, if it's a success or failure, I'm good with it, but I can't do this on my own. I can't make all this happen anymore. Right. I'm really good at doing I'm so welcoming to just do the footwork. Yeah. But to take that, I mean, the whole Western modern project has been about controlling outcomes, right? I mean, that's, you know, that's, you know, that's what we want to do. And so we colonize and we do all kinds of things because we want to control the outcome and the damage that ends up happening from that, and the exhaustion and the breach of relationships. Machine. Yeah, your stress machine, and the breach of covenant relationships. You know, what we've done to indigenous people or whatever, in the name of outcome control. Right. And now, of course, we've got this huge climate crisis, you know, and all this because, you know, we're trying to manage it, you know, and so I think like the 12-step spirituality, which my father loved, by the way, it's phenomenal. Yeah, he would say that if every church just used that as sort of a collective spiritual discipline, it would be a different world. Everybody would be so more mellow and so chilled out and so not in anybody else's business and like just taking care of your own stuff, you know? Yeah. And so it's about surrender. It's about honesty. It's acceptance. About confession. Yeah, and making repair. Yes, making amends, and it was just And I identify more with this and like almost anything in life. You know, go away and make it. And it's funny because I was always the guy in the family that was like the most uptight, right? And now I'm like the most mellow, and I'm watching everybody else, and I'm like, man, you guys need to chill out. And they're like. You know, you of all people can't say that, right? You haven't, right, but I am now because I'm and it's opened me to become much more spiritual. Everything good in my life has come as a result of that comment of just like, oh my God, thank you. Okay, so if I could do this to you. Yeah, man. My favorite Bible verse, and I know you didn't ask, but no. There's this in the Old Testament. There's this. The prophet Isaiah has this experience where he gets whisked up to heaven and sees what happens there, and then comes back and sort of says, "This is what I saw." But it starts with the phrase, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw God high and lifted up." And
like who's King Uzziah? Why is that important? Why even document that? And this one commenter said there's another way of saying, finally, when all false claims to authority are silenced, you see God.
Right.
And it's that surrender piece. Like,
Yeah.
like this is not the boss of me. This is not the boss of me. This is not, I don't have control. All those false claims to authority, all those false claims to power, finally the spiritual work is just a time to sit down and shut up.
Yeah.
And then you can actually see what's there all along.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier. Yeah.
I mean, Steve, my life is infinitely better once I switched over to that. And it was like such a welcome thing. And I was like, I don't need to be part of the results committee, and I'm good with what, because I've had
I like
successes.
that phrase. That's a good phrase. Yeah.
It's a great phrase because look, I've had successes. I've had failures.
Yeah.
And I worked equally hard. My work has nothing to do with I mean, it does an extent, like if you don't do the work, you're not going to get anywhere. Mm-hmm. But sometimes shit doesn't work.
Yep.
And instead of saying, well, you failed, it's like, well, that wasn't meant to be. Let's go on to the next project.
Yeah. Or that just becomes part of the fabric of how I make sense of life, and I can,
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it can all be marshaled into the next growth or
the next thing. Whatever.
Yeah.
That was so great that your dad said that to you on his deathbed. What a wonderful thing to say, man. You said a lot of great. Your dad was like
Have you seen that book? Shit, My Dad Said. It's a funny book about some guy who's got a redneck dad whose dad just said ridiculous things.
Shit, my dad said. I have to check it out.
And so it's all about these ridiculous, racist, or whatever things that the father said, or just dumb, But I'd like to write that book too, but just do all these wisdom sayings from my dad. My dad was full of those things, just these one-liners that kind of went, oh my,
You know what I started doing? I started putting together this little I called it life's instruction book for my kids, just like the most important lessons I've learned.
Yeah, good idea.
It's not going to be like a book. It's just going to be a few pages, but I just want them to have that. And I'm not going to wait till I'm dead I'll give it to them, and once it's done, just so that they could have. So when I am gone, maybe there'll be something in there they could, when they're having some problems.
Yeah. Do it. You never know. Like, I wish I would have written down more things my dad said, because there's a bunch of them, and of course they get lost if you don't repeat them on a regular basis.
Yeah, your dad was like Yoda. This was really good. Yeah, very good.
That's exactly what my friends used to call him in high school. They'd say, "How's Yoda?" Yeah,
I believe it. Hey, last question: what has been the biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and has that change been intentional or a natural part of aging?
Well, I think, you should probably ask my wife or my manager, but however able I am to be self-reflective, I think I'm settled down a lot more. Like, I think I'm less anxious. We're doing a kitchen renovation right now that would have just eaten me alive, 20 years ago. It's going over cost or whatever. We'll be fine. Like, I think part of it is kind of like things are what they are. You'll get through them. Not without pain, not without suffering, not without damage, but you'll still get through them. So I think part of me is more like what we've just been talking about, less trying to be the results committee. Yeah. And trying to do the work of peacefully engaging with what's in front of me.
Right.
But someone said, I forget who it is, it's probably someone very famous, but find inner peace and thousands of people around you will as well. And in the end, the greatest gift I think we have to offer the world is any peace that we can find internally. And if you can operate out of that, it just brings the temperature down. People can be more reasonable. Limbic systems that are charged up can kind of relax.
Yeah, for sure.
And and I think that's what's happening right now in North America with politics and all. Like, the limbic system is just like collectively on sky high, and so
this place is like everybody's on eggshells, no matter where you are, what side you're on.
Nobody's reasonable. I was just talking to this doctor the other day, as a friend of mine who's done a lot of work in brain science, and he says it's really funny. He says when he says when the limbic system gets activated, it's that fight or flight thing. Yeah. Right, and it floods your body full of adrenaline. And so that you can have the energy to do whatever it is you figure out what you should do. He says, but then it sends cortisone. This is what cortisone does is it shuts down the the empathy sides of your brain, because when that person is charging at you with a knife and that crazed look in their eye, this is not the time to be wondering if they had an unhappy childhood.
Yeah.
Which is an important thing, right?
True.
But he says culture right now, collectively our limbic system is up, and so we're in fight or flight, and we're not being empathetic or analytical. And so when people are in that stage, this is not the time to have heavy debates or tell them they're stupid because they're voting the wrong way or whatever. The thing to do is to bring the temperature down, be at peace. Because if we can be at peace with each other, even those that we almost violently disagree with, you can get a breath. All that stuff can settle down, and we can actually possibly start actually talking and actually dialoguing rather than yelling at each other. So at this point in my life, I think even with my music, when I'm doing concerts and stuff, is like even Bruce Cockburn in his last tour, like he's doing none of those angry songs anymore. He won't do them because he's saying this is
charged.
Yeah, people are too, and he says, I can't trust. I'm not going to feed that, and so he's not going to sing Rocket Launcher. He's not going to sing these songs that we all went, against the man, whoever that is. And he's now, his fists are down, and he's more wooing us to peace. Like, could we just sit and chill? Like you just feel this. And I think right now that may be the most important thing that maybe I can offer too, is just to not let myself be all rattled. And offer my music as peacefully and quietly, as gently and as I can, and then go home.
Awesome,
and trust it'll do its work.
Hey, I want to tell people what you. Come here, Hazel. You got to get down. Sorry. Come here, you.
That's an affectionate cat.
Oh, she's so affectionate, man.
Yeah.
Let me tell people what you got going on. And I want you to talk about your masterclass, because I know you put a lot of work into that. Please check out all of Steve's music. You can find everything available on stevebell.com. Steve's got a new album called The Glad Surprise. It's coming out October this year, 2024. What's different about, or what do you got something special on that record that's coming out?
I don't know if it's special yet, because I'm still recording it. It's the new batch of songs. There's an Eastery kind of a springy theme, I think, running to it. The Glad Surprise phrase itself is from Howard.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, Howard Thurman was Martin Luther King Jr.'s spiritual mentor, and he's the one that basically, in a sense, said to Martin Luther King, "If you can't love your enemy, you have no authority to speak to them."
Okay.
Right, and so Martin Luther King Jr. and that whole group of people, they resisted tyranny, they resisted oppression, but it wasn't dukes up. There was a love for the very people they were resisting, and that has deep authority. And Howard Thurman, who was writing during Jim Crow era, he was writing during like public lynchings, as a black man. And only someone like that can say this, but he says, in the end, he says, life is bottomed by a glad surprise.
Oh, cool.
And this is me as a kid, looking up in the skies and realizing there's a benevolence that underlines everything. So I connected to that phrase.
Okay.
And it became, I decided this is the title of the album. And then since I read the phrase, I've written a song called The Glad Surprise. Okay. So the title came first and the song came later, right? So that's what's coming out there.
Very cool. And that'll be out October 2024. Yeah. Talk about your masterclass, which you can find at stevebellguitar.com, because I know you put a lot of work into that.
Yeah, that's an ongoing thing. So over the years, on every album or so, I've put out a little acoustic fingerstyle. Like mostly I'm singer-songwriter, but I got some fingerstyle skills, and I've written some fingerstyle.
Man, you got fingerstyle skills for sure.
Well,
you don't have to say some fingerstyle skills.
I'm not Phil Keaggy, I'm not Tommy Emmanuel, but I got a thing. I got something to contribute. And so I realized if I'm ever going to teach this, now's the time. So we're doing 10 lessons, and each one basically teaches a song of mine. I'm not teaching how to play guitar. I'm teaching you how to play Steve Bell.
That's awesome.
So it's multi-camera, it's this tab and all that kind of stuff. So you kind of sign up for the 10 lessons that are going to come out every sort of second month for the next year and a half.
Cool.
And it's fairly involved. And I don't expect people can play everything, but I just you just always learn a little bit something from everything.
No, but if you learn, and I take guitar stuff all the time, and in addition to getting lessons, but if you just learn a little bit off each each
Yeah.
lesson.
Yeah.
And now that you take that in to make it yours, man. And if you're
Yeah.
into fingerstyle guitar playing, that's what you want to do.
Yeah, so I've got little things that they're mostly right hand, mostly percussive things. My left hand is not all that interesting. But I do a lot of percussive work with my right hand. There's just things that are kind of me that I think are probably worth documenting, and so that's what that's about.
Great. And so check that out. Is there like any videos or samples on the homepage or something?
Yeah. If you
Okay.
if you go to stevebell.com, there's that, and if you go to the homepage of the actual guitar masterclass, there's little things there that you can see that kind of
Awesome.
show.
So check that out at
Yeah.
stevebellguitar.com. It's the masterclass.
Thanks,
And
man.
anything else that you want to promote? What else could we pimp? What else, Steve Bell, can we pimp here, man? Come on.
I think there's probably no one left listening at this point. This has been a great and long conversation. So,
Hey,
but
listen,
thanks.
man.
No, that's good. That's awesome. Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much for everything. I really appreciate your time. I had a good feeling you'd be a really good conversation, and you delivered in spades. So thanks very much for
I'll
your
tell
time,
you, just
man.
when it was Murray Pulver that turned me on to you,
Yeah.
and he says you're going to love this. He says this is not going to be what you're expecting, and that's absolutely true. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Well, thank you. The feelings are mutual, and thanks, Murray.
Okay.
Again, we appreciate it. Hey, man, hang on for a minute, Steve. Thanks for everything. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. And I can't believe I'm doing this with little Hazel on my lap here. This is what happens when you turn old. Your cat dictates your life. Everybody, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, share it on your socials. We appreciate your support. Thanks, Steve Bell, very much for everything. And please check out stevebell.com. If you haven't checked out Steve's music or you're not familiar with, get familiar with. He's a great guitarist, amazing songwriter, and he does everything the right way. And check out his masterclass if you're a guitar player at stevebellguitar.com. And most important, man, remember that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice, have fun, and we'll see you on the next time. Peace and love, everybody. I am out. Sorry, I keep looking at my cat. Take care, everybody. Thanks, Steve.